Hey James.
Hey
Thank you.
Nadia, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Fantastic. Monday, let's go.
Yeah, let's go and thank you so much for joining this AMA session. I will be happy to know more about Intu and to learn more details. My name is Nadia Postalaki. I'm BDM manager at GetBlock. So, if you don't mind, I will start my questions and we can discuss
Yeah,
more. So, what is Intu? Can you tell us about its mission?
absolutely. It's a big question, right?
Of course.
So I think first and foremost, when we're talking about Into, the thing that motivates us, the reason that I show up here every Monday, it's really about having recognized the fact that in Web3 we're trying to create these user experiences, right, for mainstream people, and we're trying to imitate Web 2. Right, we're trying to push it further and further and further away from like all the core blockchainy stuff and all the awful blockchain words that we've created over the past couple of years. And we're trying to get it to a point where normal people can understand it and normal people can use it. Um, in that effort, we've recognized the fact that we are missing the infrastructure, a lot of the core infrastructure that's needed to really deliver on that experience. So Into, first and foremost, we are focused on building infrastructure for developers to help them create better experiences for their end users. And specifically better experiences that help match that end user's expectation, right? The idea that I am a human being, I should be able to lose my password. I am a human being, I should be able to reset my password. I should be able to share ownership with people that I trust, right? With my family, with my company, right? With the organization. And so first and foremost, yeah, Into is about human first infrastructure, and really kind of supporting developers on that journey, so that when the mainstream's ready and we figured out the rest of the big picture stuff, right, as an industry, that we have the right tools in place, we have a solid base to go from. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for answering my first question. Yeah, it's like the overlook. So, can
Yeah.
you like now if sorry, let's be a little bit more specific. So, in what ways is Into unique when compared to other Web3 solutions? So, I mean, what advantages does it offer to those looking to build with it, such as businesses or developers?
Sure. Um, First off, it's easy, right? What Intu's done, so our first product, and just to kind of try to stay on the question, what we've been trying to solve is accounts in Web3, right? This is how normal people, how you and I, we identify ourselves to the network. A Web2 equivalent would be like your IP address or an email address that you use to log into things, right? This is kind of like my identity. Um, Starting from that point, when it comes to developers, it's really three things. The first one, it has to be easy, right? So we've gone ahead and we've taken super cutting edge cryptography, right? Zero knowledge proofs and multi-party computation, all these big fancy words, and we've packaged it into this little SDK, right? It's under 5 MB, and anyone that knows JavaScript, any developer, can basically get up and running in less than 30 minutes. So it's fast, right? It's a very low learning curve to start creating these accounts. You don't have to understand it to use it, right? Step one. Step two, and this is really getting more into like the advantages part. We've managed to do this in a way that's fully decentralized and fully non-custodial. And that's important because what that means for the end developers is that we do not introduce what we refer to as vendor risk, right? This idea that I'm building my dApp. I know that I have to stand on the shoulders of other people in order to get there, right? I need GetBlock. I need something like Intu. I need, right? There's other things that I need. But at least when it comes to the accounts, because this is where your users are holding their digital assets, we felt it was very important to not introduce vendor dependency, which means if I build this product and Intu goes away tomorrow, right? Your product keeps working. the accounts for your end user keeps working. There's no way for Intu to turn you off. And so for us, that's really core, right? For infrastructure, it's like if there's a road outside, but suddenly you can't use the road because someone decided that the road was going to stop working, you'd be pretty upset, right? That's infrastructure. And with Intu, we don't introduce that vendor dependency, right? So it's fast, it's forever, right? You can build and plan on using it for a much longer time, right? Crypto for a century. And then the last bit is just the features, right? You can now accomplish more for your end users, right? You can customize what that experience is. You can tailor that experience to specifically what it is that you're looking for. The expectations of a DeFi trader are different than someone who collects NFTs for fun, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a little ridiculous right now to think that one size fits all is good enough, especially when it comes to mainstream. So yeah, it's fast, it's forever, and you can build what you need for your end users. That's the long and short of it.
Fast and forever sounds great, and actually thank you for explaining, because how you explain it sounds pretty easy even for me to start using it. So yeah, it's a great explanation.
We're working on updating our website to make it a little bit more approachable. Just every time we do it, it's like, okay, this is still too technical. It's still too technical. It's still too technical. We got to get further away from that. So I'm glad it's working.
I'm sure you have it in mind, because like the way you explain it sounds pretty simple for everyone to understand how it works.
That's great.
So can you actually provide some practical examples of how Intu can be utilized?
Yeah, of course. So practical, first and foremost, I'm not a developer. I don't code. I can read it. I can talk with the people that write the code. So for me, this is practical, but hopefully if some developers listening, they don't expect me to get into like actually doing the hello world themselves. But the real practical part of it, right? So the account, the way that it works, you still have your static address, right? This is your 0xabc123. It can be human readable using something like DNS, right? That hasn't changed. The part that Intu has really changed is this idea of the private key no longer being this static, permanent thing that you can't change. And if you lose it, you lose everything, right? If it's compromised, your account is worthless. And so we've removed that permanent private key part, and we've replaced that with key shares. And these key shares are dynamic. You can change them forever, as many times as you like. So like the core kind of concept to understand is your end users now still have their account, but now they can share ownership, right? I can distribute my private key between my cell phone, my desktop, my ledger, paper wallet, right? I can give one to someone that I trust, right? To a loved one, to a family member. I can share ownership between a board of directors. And we can add users, we can remove users, we can reset everybody's password, right? It's really, really flexible in how you do it. So when it comes to speaking to developers and how can we use this practically, we've kind of seen them kind of go into two different camps, right? The first camp is we want to create a specific user experience, right? I want to do one-click onboarding for my Web3 enabled game, and I want to be able to help my end users reset their password, right? And so now you can do that, and you can do that at the infrastructure level. Right. And so it's something so critical like the actual account that's holding the assets. You don't have to worry about vendors and bundlers and other sorts of like lighter or pseudo infrastructure. You can actually do that at the infrastructure level and say, hey, end user, I'm going to give you 3/5 ownership of this account. You can use your account completely without me. I can't use the account without you. But in the event that you lose part of your password, right, part of your secret, I can help you reset your password, right? I can now offer you customer service. You can say, hey, please reset my password. And now I can support you in that experience. So on the interface side, it's account recovery, it's distributed ownership, it's hybrid custody models. It's really being able to customize how all these things behave. And then on the other side, what we're calling kind of like the innovators, right? And these are people that have thought, okay, the private key now can change. The private key can now be broken into little pieces. How can we use this to do really cool things that was not possible before, right? And so things like being able to transfer ownership of an entire account, not just assets, right? But actually, like, I'm going to give you, Nadia, my entire portfolio, right? I was playing this NFT game. You now want to play this NFT game. I'm going to give you my account, right? I'm going to sell you my account, and all the hours that I put into it, I can now do that in a way that's verifiable, right? Like, I can now remove my password. I can give you the only remaining password for it. And in the scope of one transaction, you've now inherited every single asset on every single network that account is viable for, right? So if it's EVM compatible, that's most of Web3. And so when it comes to the practical side, right, that's the other half, is people that are really kind of leveraging this new mental model, this new framework, that I can change passwords, and I can push that further, right? So yeah, I think that's probably practical enough.
And very exciting, honestly, like how you describe it. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. And we've heard about the core functionality of the Intu SDK. Could you give us a detailed walkthrough of these primary functions?
Oh shoot, okay. I kind of jumped the gun a little bit on that one. I think I covered it a bit in the last question.
Yes, you did.
But to elaborate a little bit further, so the way that it works, you have your software development kit, your SDK, that's built directly into an application, right? So that can be your mobile app, right? This is iOS app, Play Store, whatever. It can be a web-based application. It runs in browser. It can be a back-end application. It can run on a server. So you've got that part, and that does all of the heavy lifting, right? So the actual math, the actual stuff that creates the account, that happens on your local device. I'm not trusting Amazon to do the math for me and then getting the result. I'm actually doing it myself. And then where Web3 comes in, we use smart contracts to go ahead and help communicate between the different devices, between the different users, as well as store information that we need to be sharing with each other. And so with these two parts, right, you start getting into really what can I do with it? And so the first is you can create these accounts, right? So unfortunately, we can't convert old accounts, but we can create new ones that now have changeable private keys. The second part is obviously using the account. So we use something called threshold signatures, which means you can say, hey, in order to use this account, I want to require 2 out of 5, right? 2-factor authentication, or 3 out of 5. Or if it's something super secure, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 9, whatever my business needs, I can define what that is. And then the last part is really the account recovery. And so this is the ability to go ahead and reset these key shares, reset your secrets. But you don't have to change the participants, right? So you can have the same 5 devices and just update your password for all of it. And so for us, that we call that proactive security, right? And it's this idea that your bank asks you to change your password every 6 weeks, right? Or whatever, right? Because that's safe. Because the longer you've used the secret, the more likely it's not a secret anymore. But for whatever reason, Web3, we decided that we're not going to change our secrets. We're going to have one, and I'm going to put your credit score on it. I'm going to give you $100,000 worth of digital assets, and I'm just going to hope that you don't mess that up, right? Like that's terrifying. And so this ability to proactively secure your account, to reset your password, and really extend the life of your account, is huge, right? So those are kind of like the 3 big things: the account creation, the use of the account, and then the account recovery and the proactive security that goes with it.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. And I think now it's time to talk about something like simpler for me. So let's talk a little bit about community. How does Intu foster engagement with its community? So which platform do Intu use to facilitate communication and the exchange of ideas among the free developers?
Yeah. So all the standard stuff, I think first we'll just say that. I mean, obviously on Telegram, I don't think there's anyone in Web3 that doesn't use Telegram these days.
There are
Um,
actually. There are
huh?
people, yeah, I still talk to people who still don't use Telegram, which is absolutely
It's
incredible. Yeah.
it's crazy. Like it's gotten to the point where like WhatsApp now is just my personal stuff, and like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, if it's business, please just throw it on the Telegram. Throw it on the
Yes.
Telegram. So Telegram's easy, right? It's easy to get groups. It's easy to talk about things. Once you're building on Into, once you're ready to have kind of a more sophisticated relationship with us, we also have our Discord, right? And we have channels for everyone that's currently building on Into, and that's where you get access to our CTO. You get access to like our DevRel, like the guys that are actually there supporting you build, helping you understand, people that are there to hold your hand and walk you through it. And then the big mainstream stuff, we've been getting better at Twitter, doing more things like this with you guys, right? Making sure that people understand what Intu is and what you can do with it, and why it's important. Like we're very passionate, we're very committed to this notion that we need to fix accounts in Web3, because if not, Web3 is just going to be a very expensive Web2. And so the Twitter stuff, the YouTube stuff, a lot of blog articles and whatnot, really trying to get out there. So that's kind of like the easy stuff, and I'm not going to say that like we're unique in that. Marketing also is not my strong point, so I'm following the lead of other people that know much better than we do. I think where it's a little bit, maybe I'm not going to say we do better, but something that we found is really useful is also just engaging with people in person, right? It's so easy to do this over Zoom. It's so easy to be online all the time, just to do, asynchronous messaging, whatever. But it's important to go to meetups. It's important to go to conferences. It's important to do hackathons and get out there and in a much more casual environment, get feedback and engage with that community and see, right? On Discord, they're like, oh, I have to think about a message. I'm going to have to write things. I have to frame my question correctly. What if they don't understand it? Like, am I going to sound needy? Do I sound like an idiot? Like what? I don't know. But when you're sitting down outside having a beer, you're like, what are you building? It's like, I'm building a game. What are your challenges? I don't know how to help people get onboarded without making them click 15 times, right? You're like, oh, okay, great. Let's have a conversation. Come, sit down, right? And so being able to, I'm going to say emphasize, but just also leverage that personal network, that personal community. I know it doesn't scale very well, but for right now, it's very important. And that's, a big part of how we've also been able to start fostering advocates, right? And have people want to talk to us. Because I do think if we're doing human first infrastructure for developers, we also just have to be humans first, right?
Yes.
We're not an extra from Tron.
I absolutely agree with you, and this is actually how Intu and GetBlock met and start collaborating. Yeah. We, like, if I'm not mistaken, it was Paris conference. So, yeah.
Yeah, probably. I think so. I live in Paris now, so it's very likely.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Max was here, so wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So, how does you said a little bit about feedback, but I have the whole question about it. So, how does Intu incorporate community feedback into its developing into? Okay, once again, how does Intu incorporate community feedback into its development and planning?
Yeah. So I guess it's worth noting we are an early stage company. So we are just finishing our first audits. Everything is safe. I can proudly say that it works and it works safely. So we are planning our product launch for the mainnets in the next couple of weeks. So coming soon.
Great.
The community that we do have, the early builders, we do our best to interact with them on a regular basis. And it's been very interesting to kind of go through this with them and try and understand how they are trying to use Intu, right? We did our best to try and anticipate everything that a developer might need, but the reality is people come up with different ways of using different things all the time. And so it's about having those active channels of communication, just having it be very open and providing access to the decision makers and people that can make these changes very quickly, right? So hey, I know that you mostly support Ethers JS, but we're trying to do this on a backend version. Can you support WAGMI? And it's like, well, we hadn't thought about that, but sure, give us a minute, right? And then a few days later, we can come back and we can change that. So if they're little fixes, then that's something that's easy for us to do. We'll absolutely do it, right? The first 50, we are working on finding that fit and kind of striking that balance. I think that the other side is, well, I guess there's two parts to it. One, there's a lot of forward-looking stuff that people want. That's great feedback for us that we've now put on like a research and development map. The reality is that we spend a lot of time in the cryptographic infrastructure part of Web3. And so things take longer to build, and things take longer to build safely. And so some of those items got put kind of onto a larger roadmap. I think the other side of it is the SDK and the product Intu as it stands today. It's much more powerful than I think people anticipate. And so a lot of times people come to us with feedback, or they're looking to do something, and it's just they don't know what they don't know, right? And then it's an education piece. And it's like, oh, you can do that now. This is how you can accomplish that. And they go, okay, I like this, I can do it. Now let's optimize it, right? And so we're really hoping that for the next year, our focus is more on optimization and less on building new features and new functions. But I mean, so far it's been good. If you're looking to build, now's the time, right? We still have less than 50. So we're putting a lot of effort into kind of engaging with people directly, taking that feedback seriously, and then putting it on our roadmap if it's something that multiple people want.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much. So are there any success stories or notable collaborations that have arisen from the Intu community that you can share with us?
Yes. I might not use names just because I think a lot of them are still in stealth. So I think, so we came out of stealth at ETH Denver this year. We moved to like a closed beta. So we help people start building early on. We're now in open beta. Not anyone can build now. And what we've really seen adoption from, it's been more on the innovator side. And so these are people that again are using Intu to do things that previously were not possible. And can, I think pretty proudly say that I think 3 of them are actually fundraising right now using the proof of concept that they built using our beta. So that for us is super cool. But this is like a merger and acquisition platform is one of them. So this is like, selling my game NFTs to you, that kind of concept. But for, in more sophisticated environments. So things like DAOs, things like enterprise, things like organizations. So being able to safely transfer accounts between 2 different parties in a way that's reliable and verifiable. We have another project that's been building out operations logic specific to DeFi trading, right? So these are spending limits, these are co-signing requirements, these are government compliance, regulatory compliance policies that we have to adhere to. And so they've used Intu for their accounts, and then they've built out the logic of their actual business on top of it. And they're going to be providing that as infrastructure for other companies to build dashboards, to build their organizations around, which we think is super, super cool because the board of directors or the management can still maintain control of the treasury while empowering the employees in a way that's safely and compliant to go ahead and use the company funds as intended. It just really removes a lot of the friction that you see in like big DeFi trading desks today.
Okay, I got it. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Even
though you said you can't share the names, you could share with us like the main idea of it, so that's great. Yeah. Thank you. So now is the question about us. How will partnering with GetBlock benefit users and clients from both platforms?
Great, and I mean, this can be a conversation if you want to jump in.
Yes, you're right.
I think for me, this comes back to kind of that initial point about developers needing better infrastructure, right, in order to provide that better user experience. If you want to do high volume trading, if you want to do low latency trading, if you want to provide a more seamless gaming experience, you might, I mean, one, as a developer, it's hard enough to focus on your core competencies, right? Like on focusing on the game or on the UI, UX, whatever. Like, no one wants to focus on data centers, on RPC points, right? Like on the connection bit. But you also need it to perform, right? And so in order to provide that user experience that I have in my head, you need people like GetBlock. And so at least for us, and why we were excited to kind of chat with you guys, is that I think we're both approaching this in the same way, right? This is what you need, but you don't want to have to think about it. That's basically what we've been saying too, right? Like, this is what you need. You don't want to think about it. You don't want to know how all this stuff works. You just want it to. You want it to work safely, and you want it to perform. And it has to fit within our budget and all these. Right? There's all these other things that go into it. But yeah, we're never going to get to the big mainstream Web3 that I think we're hoping for, right? Most of the year, people were, I mean, at least at the beginning, it was all, oh, the next billion users, the next billion users, the next billion users. Great. You can't get to the next billion users unless you build the infrastructure that the dApps need to get there, right? You couldn't have had Uber without the iPhone, that kind of thing. And so in a lot of ways, what we're doing is I'm gonna say doing the hard stuff, but we're focused on the stuff that people don't look at. And so the goal there being, at the end of the day, that you can provide a reliable and more enjoyable user experience for people that maybe don't want to know what a private key is, people that don't want to know how the blockchain actually works, how I'm connected to it. They just want it to work, right?
Yes.
I'm sure you have some stuff to add from the GetBlock side.
So I can just say that we do the same what you do. I mean, in terms of making easier the life of those who want to build a Web3 project or to build something in Web3 in general. So yeah, like I absolutely agree with what you said before. And for us, for both of us, I think it's a great idea for us to collaborate. So just in case when our clients need something from your side, they know for sure where they can address, and I'm sure you will help them, and we will be glad to provide them with our notes in case that they need it, so we can make easier their lives. And yeah, as you said, they just want it to work. They don't want to get into details. So yeah, I think that's the point when we can help them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll easily say with Intu, right, we don't manage your RPC points. So working with GetBlock is super, super easy. And I think as organizations, we're both very much focused on making that developer experience easier.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Removing those roadblocks. And so I think that, if you want attention and you want to get it done quickly and you want it to perform and you want it to be easy, come talk to us, right? That's the goal.
Okay, so about the future, what does the future hold for Intu?
Oh, wow. Okay, more questions.
Yes, next steps.
The future. The future for Intu. I mean, looking at the roadmap and not even the roadmap, just like, especially these past couple of weeks, taking a big step back. And everyone right now is very much focused on imitating Web2 experiences, right? And I don't think that we're going to successfully imitate Web2 until we have better infrastructure. And once we do have that better infrastructure, that the value of that imitation is going to be very limited, because now we have more tools, which means that we can innovate, right? We can actually push it forward. And so, like, just as an example, one of the next things that we're building out. So right now, when you create an Intu account, right, it's associated with Web3 native accounts, right? You can still use your MetaMask, you can still use your Ledger. If you look at like account abstraction, everyone's focused on Face ID, right? On biometrics, on passkeys. I want to be able to scan my face and create a Web3 account and not have to do anything else beyond that, right? And you see these really attractive, compelling videos, 30 seconds of, hey, I scan my face, I have a Web3 account, my onboarding's done. Great. The reality is that, yes, it works, but we're imitating it, and it's less efficient and less resilient, maybe, than the way that Web 2 does it now, right? And so it's not enough to just be able to do what Web 2 does. Compared to Web 3 today, it's a big step forward, but compared to Web 2, it's not better. It maybe isn't even the same, right? It's close. So for Intu forward-looking, it's taking a step back and saying, okay, we know kind of what we need to do. We need to help support user experience. But that's not enough. We also need to figure out how to do this without losing the why of Web3, right? The self-sovereignty, the agency, the decentralization part of it. If I'm on Web3, but I don't own my digital assets, that's not Web3. That's just a more expensive way of doing Web2. And we can get there. We haven't missed that opportunity yet. We just need to build the infrastructure for it. So with kind of that in mind, how do we preserve the why of Web3, but help people get and imitate these Web2 experiences? So like passkeys support. We've identified a way to take the Intu shares and be able to assign them not just to Web3 native accounts, but really to anything. So now it can be your Face ID, it could be your thumbprint. It could be a zero knowledge proof that's generated from scanning the NFC chip in your passport, right? We can assign shares to things that are not Web3 native and convert that into things that are Web3 native. So again, coming in at the infrastructure level, so you're not going to another infrastructure provider, you're going straight to GetBlock, right? You're going straight to the RPC provider, and you don't need other people to translate that for you before the blockchain actually does what the blockchain does. So I think in the short term, for sure, it's identifying the experiences that people want, right? They want to be able to use Web 2 experiences today, but how can we do that in a way that's really Web3 native and comes in at the infrastructure level so that we don't lose the why? So that's the focus. That's all the conversations I've been having for the past couple of weeks. That could always change, right? We pivot, we rotate often, but we're very excited about rolling this out and kind of this notion that I can now share ownership of my account with more than just Web3 things. It could be anything, right? So yeah, I think from a roadmap standpoint, that's probably the big one.
Okay, thanks for sharing. And I think you covered, I have one more question, the last one, I promise. Okay. And I think you covered my next question a little bit, but if you don't mind, I will still ask it. So yeah. How can your organization contribute to advancing Web3 development and ensure its seamless integration into our daily lives in the future?
And at the end of the day, I want to be able to go to my mom and be like, hey, this is the new internet, right? and what I spent my past 2 years building is helping you be able to reset your password for the new internet, right? Like just so there's a few things that happen there. One, it's a totally normal human expectation that we have to meet. The second is that I'm able to talk about it in a way that doesn't require me to have spent that much time in Web3, right? Like someone that can, log into their email address and, maybe use Venmo or something can now start using Web3 applications in a way that's natural to them, in a way that doesn't require them to know all of the things that we did before. It's just, it starts here, right? And so changing the language around Web3, I think, is very important. Like, I hate the term wallet. I don't think a wallet accurately represents what an account in Web3 is. I'm not putting things into it and carrying it around with me. It's almost more like my identity. It just happens to have some storage associated with it. Right? Like no one cared about Web 2 or cloud computing until it made their life easier, right? Until you had to stop ordering DVDs from Netflix and you could just download the app and stream it, right? That was, for a lot of people, that was a big kind of Web 2 aha moment was, okay, this is better because now the delivery is not the mail, it's my computer, and that's fine. And so we need to keep pushing to that. And I think I've forgotten the question a little bit, but that's really, yeah. I mean, I think that's where we need to go. I think that's the future that we want. I think we want, at least for starters, a Web 2 experience, but without having to sacrifice my data or the integrity of who I am, right? And maybe get rid of SaaS, right? I think subscriptions need to die. I think they're tired. I'd love to just own something again and not have to worry about paying $14 a month for something that I may or may not use that often. We have programmable internet money. Let's use it. Like, there's so many things that we've done with Web3 that's different and better. And right now we're just so focused on imitating that we're forgetting the innovations that we've already done, right? So.
Okay, I got you. And thank you so much for sharing your ambitious plans. I'm really glad that we actually had this time together. I think like 40 minutes, so I could learn a little bit more about you. Of course, I've read it before this AMA session, and I had a conversation with your colleagues before on Telegram. So yes, I knew a little bit about you, quite more than a little bit, but now it was great to know about your plans and to listen how you see our collaboration and how we can help the world and to make their lives easier.
Oh, yes, that's the ambition.
That's the plan, yeah.
100%.